So today we're going to talk a little bit about integrations and how an integration really is the heart of your digital transformation effort. So we'll start with a little introduction and background on me. So my name is Nick Mortensen. I'm the Director of Development for Eide Bailly Technology Consulting. And it's my job to make sure that technical solutions are built correctly, they're built to scale, and that it's the right solution to address the business concerns of a client. So I actually started off as a business process consultant a while ago, and over time just kind of learned that I really enjoyed the harder problems that would present themselves in the more technical portions of projects. And so I really kind of fell in love with that and pursued it more, and eventually ended up building a development team that now has essentially three development teams with different focuses. And so I have a team that works on the Salesforce.com platform. They do Salesforce.com custom development, customization, and architecture. And so it is, Apex, Visualforce, Lightning Framework, for those of you who are familiar with the Salesforce ecosystem, but that is what we focus on, is the customization of that CRM. The second group is traditional full stack web development. And so we kind of focus more on enterprise level projects and problems with that group. And then the third group is a group that focuses on nothing but integration, strategy, and architecture and design and implementation. So that's a little bit about myself and some of the work that we do. So real quick, a little bit of background on Eide Bailly. So Eide Bailly is a top 20 tax and accounting firm based in Fargo, North Dakota. We've been around for a little over 100 years now, which is pretty cool. And we've got over 2,000 employees across the United States. And we have a large focus on consulting. And specifically, we have a pretty large technology consulting practice. And so we do everything from ERP to CRM to advisory services, business intelligence, and data warehousing. So we have a pretty good breadth of talent on our technology consulting team, and it's pretty fun because we're able to help in all different aspects of the business. So there's a little bit of background on Eide Bailly. So today we're talking, really what we're talking about is digital transformation and integration's role in your transformation effort. So before we start, I want to use a little bit of analogy and use the opportunity to tell you guys a little bit more about me. You guys get to know me better. So I grew up playing sports, right? I love football, baseball, basketball, right? I kind of played them all. And, I considered myself to be a fairly athletic person. And I have 3 kids now, and I am finding it harder and harder to remain in shape and to stay engaged in sports and stuff like that. And so recently I joined a boxing gym. And so boxing is something that I've always thought was kind of fun, kind of cool. I watch it on TV every once in a while. I remember doing some just kind of backyard boxing with friends in high school. And, back in high school, I thought I was halfway decent. And so I joined this gym, and, I definitely think that I was a little optimistic about how I would perform, because it absolutely blew me away how terrible I was. And it was actually incredibly frustrating for me, because I walked in with this expectation that I would be able to get in and just perform right away. And so in working with some of the coaches there, what I found out was my biggest hindrance in progressing with boxing, and what was keeping me back, was the fact that I just had it in my head, and I think it's a little bit of a natural instinct in an environment like that I had to punch as hard as I could, that I had to throw these big hard punches, and that was what was going to make me a good boxer. Well, it turns out that that's actually one of the worst things that you can do. And it's actually a strategy in boxing to get inside the opponent's head and make them try to throw big, hard, heavy punches because it's slow. Boxing is all about speed and agility and accuracy. So if you look at our boxing gym, there's a big sign up on the wall, and it says quick feet. And they just pound it into our heads that power is kind of the enemy, and it's a little bit counterintuitive. You need to have your feet be quick. You need to be light on your feet. You need to be agile. You have to see what your opponent is doing, and you have to be able to quickly react. And if I go in and I throw a big, heavy punch, it's really, really slow. And if you are boxing somebody who knows what they're doing, they're going to take you every single time. Doesn't matter how hard that punch is. If they can't hit you, it doesn't really matter. So, Nick, what in the world does boxing have to do with digital transformation? I have a quote up here, and this is from Salesforce.com. So for those of you who are not familiar, Salesforce.com is a customer relationship management tool. They are cloud-based, and they were one of the big players in cloud back in the day. And they really established themselves as a leader in the cloud-based CRM space. They're a multi-billion-dollar company now, and they are the absolute standard when it comes to CRM. And so they have this quote on their website that I thought was pretty enlightening. So it says, the process of using digital technologies to create new or modify existing business process, culture, and customer experiences to meet changing business and market requirements. This reimagining of business in the digital age is digital transformation. So digital transformation is taking a look at your processes, your culture, the experiences of your customer, the experiences of your employee, and how is that going to change, and how does that need to be, to use Salesforce's word, reimagined with the new requirements that are in place with, the business and market changes that are happening. So, the need to adapt. If you look at the S&P 500, if you look at 1920, the average lifespan of a company was 67 years. So in 1920, the average company was 67 years old. And if you look at the S&P 500 today, the average company is 15 years old. Why would that be? It's because the business landscape, right, coming back to this quote, right, the business and market requirements, it's changing faster than ever, right? It is happening at warp speed now. And the crazy part is that today is the slowest day in the rest of history for the speed at which our business landscape is changing. It is getting faster and faster and faster and faster, and it's not going to slow down. So what does that mean for a company? What does that mean for me as a business owner or as a stakeholder in a business? It means that because today's rate of change is faster than it ever has been before, I have to be able to change. I have to be able to adapt and innovate. I have to improve what I'm doing. I have to be able to evolve more so than ever before in history. So I got my master's in information systems, and when I was studying there, all of my professors drilled this saying into my head: if you're not growing, you're dying. And so I kind of looked it up, and I found a couple other instances. William Burroughs said, when you stop growing, you start dying. And Lou Holtz said, in this world, you're either growing or you're dying, so get in motion and grow. The reason that's the case is because as the environment around us is changing, if we don't have the ability to change and adapt and evolve with the business environment around us, we're going to get left in the dust. And that's why the average business has gone from 67 years old to 15 years old in the last 80, 90 years, right? The business environment is moving so fast now, companies aren't able to keep up. And the companies that are able to keep up look nothing like they did when they started. They have to be able to change and adapt and innovate and improve and evolve. And so I'm going to go back a slide real quick and talk about this picture on the left-hand side. Digital transformation is a big buzzword in the industry right now, and I hear it used all the time, and I hear it used incorrectly. A lot of people are talking about how they need to digitally transform their companies, and they are addressing it like digital transformation is a place they need to get, right? We need to make our company digitally transformed. And that is not an accurate statement. Digital transformation is about the process of allowing yourself to be more agile and fluid. It's about the process of allowing yourself to meet changing business requirements and changing market requirements. As the transformation portion it's never going to end, right? We're always going to be changing, and so we have to understand there is no destination here, right? The whole point of this of a digital transformation effort is to position yourself to be able to continue to change and to adapt, right? It's not to change and adapt to the way I need things now and then be done, because that's exactly how you get left in the dust. So tying that back to boxing, right? Boxing is all about being quick and agile, right? It's about being able to understand what your opponent, and in this analogy, the opponent is the business landscape, understand what they're doing and be able to react quickly to the changes that are happening. And if we decide that, if we look at digital transformation as a destination, you start putting yourself in the mindset of, I'm looking for my opening with my opponent, and I'm just going to plant and I'm going to throw a big heavy punch. And as soon as you do that, you're setting yourself up for failure, because the environment that we live in now is so fast that by the time you are done throwing your big heavy punch, you are out of position, right? By the time you are done making your big implementation and getting yourself to the destination you think you need to be at, the market has changed and your solution is no longer relevant. And I see this mistake being made over and over and over again, and companies going under and struggling because they haven't embraced the concept of, I can't, it's not the same anymore. I can't put a solution in place and run with it for 15, 20 years, which is something that we used to see. That's just not the way things are anymore. We have to be able to move and adapt and change as the market around us changes. All right, Amy, we've got a polling question.
All right. Our first polling question: what is the average lifespan of a company today as listed in the S&P 500? That first poll is now open.
Awesome. So it looks like most of you got it right. The average lifespan is 15 years. So the role of technology. I hear more and more often, so for example, we have a client that's a car dealership, and they say, we're car dealers. Yes, I understand. We're actually a technology company. I hear this all the time in every single industry, and it's very true. The role of technology in business today is growing, and it's becoming more influential and more important for you to know and understand if you want to continue to be successful in your business. So what that does not mean is that technology will make or break your business. That's not the case. The role of technology is to support and enable a good, sound business strategy or business model, right? It can make you faster, it can make you smarter, it can make you more accurate and more consistent, and that's fantastic. And you need those things if you want to get ahead, but it has to have a direction. And so I've got a couple of examples up here of technologies. So how many of you remember Napster? Napster came out and it was all the rage, and it was actually a really cool technology, and it was very advanced for the time, and it fell flat on its face. It went absolutely nowhere. Why is that? Because it was a great technology without a good direction. Now you look at Netflix. When you compare these two companies, they actually have a very similar business model, right? Netflix said, hey, we are going to share files peer-to-peer. Netflix said, hey, guess what? We're also going to share files. We're not going to do it peer-to-peer. We're going to own the content and share it out, but the actual underlying technology, very, very, very similar. The difference, Napster didn't have a good business model. They didn't have a good direction. Netflix had a great business model and a great direction. And they were able to leverage what is almost identical technology to create a company that's completely disrupting the industry instead of a company that fell flat on its face. And so I just want to make sure I'm drilling home the point. Technology in and of itself will not solve your problems. You still have to go in and solve the problem. Technology will enable you to put the solution in effect, right? To do what you tell it to do. I see it quite often where a company says, hey, you know what? We're going to go buy Salesforce, or we're going to buy NetSuite, or we're going to go buy Tableau, which is a business intelligence software. And when we buy that technology, we are going to be good to go, right? We're going to have this awesome technology, and it's going to fix all our problems, and it will never ever work that way. If you don't take the time to understand your sales process while you're implementing Salesforce, or your marketing process, figure out what's broken or what needs to be fixed, and then implement the technology with improved processes, you're taking the same garbage and putting it in a bright, shiny new container. At the end of the day, it's still garbage. And it's the exact same thing with an ERP, with a WMS, with an e-commerce website, with your business intelligence solution. Technology can only do what it's told to do, and so you have to figure out what you want to do with your technology before you can ever dream of getting a return on that investment. So now I want to talk a little bit about data. So I took a screenshot of this because this is pretty, I thought it was pretty incredible. You hear all the time, data is the lifeblood of your business. And so I've got a quote here by Microsoft, and then I couldn't believe when I did my Google search how many results I got that talked about data being like your lifeblood. But right, this quote from Microsoft is, your data is the lifeblood that powers your business. Without it, you're dead. So I don't know how many of you know the man on the right, but this is Ray Dalio. He has one of the most successful hedge funds in the world, called Bridgewater. He was the founder of it. They have $124.7 billion in assets under management. And Ray Dalio's net worth is $18.6 billion. He's one of the most wealthy men in the entire world. And do you know how he built his empire? He built his empire on data. So basically what Ray Dalio did is he looked at information from as far back as he could gather it regarding economics, market trends, stuff like that. And he took that information and put it all into a computer and started to look for trends in that data. And looking and understanding historical trends helped him understand how the market was going to behave or react to things happening in present day. And based on that information, he was able to essentially bet against the market and make quite literally billions and billions of dollars. All of that is because he has data. All right, let's look at some of the other big companies in the world right now. Google. What does Google do? They are in the data business. All of their fortune is made off of their ability to serve ads correctly, right? That is where their money comes from. And the reason they're able to serve ads well is because they've been able to collect a ton of data that they are able to then leverage that data to find out who do I need to target, statistically speaking, to get a better chance of some type of action, right? Click on the link, go to the website, whatever it may be. Data, quite honestly, the data that you own is probably worth more than the business you're running if you know how to tap into it. And it's becoming more and more so the case. Data is what we leverage to make business decisions, right? We've all heard the term, we need to make data-driven decisions, right? That's how we are going to have our business be successful, is by making decisions based off of data and facts as opposed to a gut feel, because the data is going to win out more times than our gut feel is. Every once in a while, yeah, maybe the data leads you astray, but just like Ray Dalio, right, in his investing, of course he's made poor bets and lost money, but over time he's been statistically much more successful when leveraging the data. The rest of the market, the rest of businesses, the rest of the business environment right now, they've kind of figured this out. So people are now making decisions based off of data, right? Fact-based decision making, and they're able to play the odds and be successful over time. So that's something that we have to have if we want our business to continue to be successful. So that brings us to the main talking point of today, integrations. So if data is the lifeblood of your business, your integration strategy is the heart, pumping your data throughout your application ecosystem. Right now we have a polling question.
All right, polling question number 2. It's a true or false. The role of technology is to support and enable to make you faster, smarter, more consistent, more accurate, but needs direction. And everyone voted true, so good job there. And go ahead there, Nick.
Awesome. So I'm actually going to go back a slide real quick. I just want to stay on this slide for a second. So I want to talk a little bit about why integrations are so important and what makes them the heart, right? What makes integrations the heart of your digital transformation effort? For those of you who were around in business 20, 25 years ago, you know that back then, and even as recent as maybe 15 years ago, we had what we now call monolithic applications. You had these applications that were stored on servers that you owned, and they were in your company's building, right? And you had like a big server room, and your applications, right? The systems and the the tools that you use to run your business, they would live on those servers. And single providers like Oracle, for example, would provide you your entire suite of business applications. And your decision was basically, right, do I go with company X or company Y? And if I choose company Y is providing me with all of my applications, right? Everything I need to run my business. It's going on my servers, which I own, and all of my data resides there. And so integrations, it's an interesting word right now because it has completely been redefined in the past 5 to 10 years. So before, because you had these big monolithic integrations, or I'm sorry, these big monolithic applications that all lived on one, essentially, right? All a server is a big computer. So all these applications on the same computer, basically, it was really easy to have access to all of your data, right? I had everything in one place, and I had access to all the data. I would pull it all off. I could run reports. I could kind of do what I needed to do. And an integration was, if for whatever reason I had this one siloed application out there, I would take the information out of that and I would put it on the server that I own with the rest of the information that I have, and boom, I'm done. I'm integrated, right? That was kind of the way we thought about integrations for a really long time. But about 10 years ago, everything started to change with the advent of the cloud. So, you know, the cloud, just a quick definition, it means that I no longer have to have that computer, right, that server. I don't have to own it. Somebody else is going to maintain that, and I pay them as a basically they provide it for me as a service, and so I pay them a little bit every month, as opposed to paying for a chunk of computer stuff that I then own and am required to maintain. And it all comes down to economics, right? I want to be able to specialize on what I specialize in. I make shoes, for example. I want to focus on making shoes. I want to be researching different foams. I want to be researching shoe design and ergonomics of the foot, right? That's where I want to spend all of my time, effort, and energy. I don't want to have to hire somebody or try and figure out how to maintain a database and a web server, right? That is not in my wheelhouse. That is wasted time and energy. And so I will pay somebody else to do that so I can hyper focus on what I need to do to be successful in my business, right? That was kind of the idea behind the cloud. And so with everybody focusing on what they are best in, you gain a lot of efficiency. And so the cloud kind of just took off because people realized, hey, I don't have to worry about these things anymore. Well, what does that mean? Well, if I don't own the computer, right, if that application isn't on the server that I own that's in my building, well, how do I get my data, right? So let's use salesforce.com as an example, right? My CRM, my sales data is now in the cloud, which means how do I know who my clients are? How do I figure out what they've paid? Well, all of that exists on somebody else's computer. And if I need some data out of there, some data out of my CRM, and some data out of my accounting system, and I need to merge that together to make sure I'm understanding holistically what's happening with my client, well, I have to have that data combined somehow. Well, how do I get information out of somebody else's computer? I don't know where it is. I can't see it. And that's where the role of integrations and APIs and things like that come into play. And that's probably, the details of that is probably a little bit more technical than I want to dive into right this second in this particular webinar. But if you guys do have any questions around that stuff, we're happy to connect and I can talk through some of the more technical details with you offline. But the point being, I now have to use an integration to pull information out of the cloud and combine it with the rest of my data. Well, the cloud has taken off, and what it's meant, another big thing that it's meant for customers is I now have the ability to use very specialized data. Instead of going to company X or company Y and just getting whatever it is they decide to build, I can now go out and say, you know what? I'm in construction. I want a construction focused ERP. And I can go find something like Sage 300 CRE, right? That is a construction focused application and it is built for my industry and it's just better, right? It's easier to use. It has the functionality that I need. I don't have to do some wonky workaround to get what I need. That is almost a custom built, tailored solution for me and my business problems. So what ends up happening? I end up with a it allows us to take a best of breed approach where I can pick and choose the different applications that I need to use for different parts of my process. And now I'm able to combine the best instead of choosing something and getting a blanket treatment. I get much more tailored and customized applications. And for most people, that has been a massive, massive help. And the other thing is, like I mentioned before, right now I no longer have to own a server and maintain all these things, and it's also reducing the barrier to entry, right? It's a lower upfront cost for me to get into these technologies. In the past, right, if I wanted something specific or tailored, I had to custom build it. I had to build it for myself, and that was really expensive. And so with the advent of the cloud, I no longer am in the need of having to hyper customize or build from scratch a software to meet my needs. I can build and use something out of the box. So now what that means, I have my CRM in the cloud, my ERP in the cloud, my e-commerce, right, my website in the cloud. I have a mobile application in the cloud, right? Everything's in the cloud. And guess what? My ERP's cloud, like where they're storing information, and my CRM where they're storing information, it's not the same place. I have to make these things talk now, right? And so if data is the lifeblood of your business, your integration strategy is at heart. It's going to move the necessary data between all of the different systems that you have in play. So with that, I'm going to jump to a small whiteboarding session. So I'm going to try and leverage technology real quick. We have our CRM, right? And that is in the cloud. And now I've got my ERP also in the cloud. I have my e-commerce solution. I have my mobile app. Now let's say I've got my BI, my business intelligence, and then I've got my WMS or something like that, warehouse management system. So somebody comes into my e-commerce website and they decide to sign up and create an account. So I have to send some information to my mobile application. I need to send some information to my CRM. And then on my mobile account, they update their information. So I've got to send that back to my e-commerce website. I've got to send that to my CRM. And then on the e-commerce website, with their account, they make a purchase. Okay. All right, well, I've got to send that, right, the purchase to my CRM. I've got to send the purchase to my ERP, and I have to send it to my WMS to be fulfilled. And then I want to pull financials into my business intelligence system, and my warehouse management stuff, efficiency stuff needs to go into my BI. The order's fulfilled, right? I want that to go into my CRM, right? And you can see here, I end up over time with this just spiderweb looking system, right? This is what we call it in development, we call it spaghetti code, right? You've got stuff going all over the place, and I've only gone over a few examples, and you can already start to see how everything's starting to layer over each other and become interconnected and very complicated. So how do we address something like this? And this is where your integration strategy comes in. So let's take a look at this same situation, but with a strategy in place. So we have a CRM, our ERP, our ecom, and then we have our mobile, our BI, business intelligence, and our WMS. So let's say instead of having stuff go directly from system to system, we take a hub and spoke approach, where we have some form of a hub in the middle, and that hub's job is to broker information to the different systems in play. So I'm going to switch colors here so it's easier to see. So now let's say I've got somebody comes in right? Information comes in from my e-commerce website, and it gets sent to my mobile, it gets sent to my CRM, it gets sent to my ERP. My ERP needs to send something to my WMS. So it comes in here and goes out to my WMS. My WMS information gets sent back. It comes into my ERP, right? And so you end up with something that looks a little bit like this. That looks a lot cleaner, right? And it is a lot cleaner, right? It's much more organized. And so what ends up happening when I take an approach like this, I have created what's called a lowly coupled environment, which means each of my systems, right, my mobile, my e-commerce, my ERP, they are not coupled or tied together, right? They are, for the most part, separate from each other. And so let's say, you know what, my WMS, I custom built it. It is no longer cutting it. The amount of time I'm spending maintaining this bad boy, it is costing way too much. I can go with an out-of-the-box software, pay the licensing costs, and that licensing cost, even though it's expensive, is half what I'm paying my developers right now, right? So now I can take my developers and redeploy them to things that are more productive, or, right, no longer manage developers and implement a new WMS. So let's go ahead and, oh, whoops, remove the WMS, and what happens, right? I end up, everything else is still intact, right? I could take that WMS out of play. Nothing else needs to be added. I can now put in my new WMS, and the only thing that I have to build is, how do I want to send information to the hub, and how am I going to receive information from this hub? That is all I'm concerned about now. So because I have put a good strategy in place, these systems are now not tied together, which means I, as a business owner, have just enabled myself to be agile. I can use the exact same tools and the exact same softwares and everything without a good strategy, without a good direction, and end up with that spaghetti code, right? And I'm still in that place where everything's tied together. Replacing my WMS now means I have to rewrite integrations to 4, 5, 6 different systems. That's painful, it's slow, it's expensive. Now I don't want to change, right? I have just positioned myself to not be agile anymore, right? To throw that heavy punch, going back to that boxing analogy, plant my feet and be stuck with the solution for a long time. And that means that the environment, the business environment that I'm in, my competitors who are not taking that approach, who are fast, who are light on their feet, who are agile, they're going to take me to town, right? They will take me every single time because they're able to adapt to the market needs faster than I'm able to, and for less money and less effort. So this is an example of a great integration strategy, and hopefully that kind of in your mind solidifies what a good integration strategy can do for you. So what are my options? So, we've been talking about integration. That's all fine and dandy. What's out there for me? How am I going, what options do I have when it comes to an integration? So first is custom code, right? This is something that we've already talked about. Then I also want to be very clear, there is no right or wrong approach. They're just different, and they have different pros and cons, and under different circumstances, right, different approaches are going to be the right solution. So what are my options? I have the ability to custom develop. I have almost no recurring fees. I have unlimited flexibility in what I can do. That's the beautiful thing and the curse with development, is if I can think it, I can build it. And I have the ability to support myself. right? If something breaks, I know it's on me. I can go fix it. But it's kind of expensive, right? It's got a pretty high upfront cost. I've got to pay developers or hire developers through a third party to make it, and it's not going to come quickly, and right, it's not going to come cheaply. You kind of get what you pay for in the world of development. If you're paying, top dollar for a highly rated firm when it comes to development, you're going to get high quality code. If you find somebody off a billboard that'll build your website for $40 an hour, you're going to get $40 an hour work. And so you get what you pay for. And so to build out this integration, it's going to be expensive, and it's not maintained, which means you do own it, right? So if something changes or system breaks or whatever, you are now on the hook to go in and make that change. So a great example, we were working with NetSuite, which is a cloud-based ERP, and a while ago they updated or upgraded their security, and so they were now using a more modern, more secure security framework. Well, there were a few people who didn't pay attention to the 6 months or year-long worth of notifications that they were getting saying, hey, by the way, we're upgrading security, make sure you address these things, right? They sent those emails out for 6 months or a year, and there were still some of those people that kind of ignored it and then called us the day the new security protocol rolled out, panicking because their solution was broken, right? So it is not maintained, and it's on, right, a developer or on you, or at the end of the day, you're responsible for making sure that changes like that get addressed, and it's going to cost you money. So the next option is using what's called an IPaaS, and IPaaS stands for an Integration Platform as a Service. So this is actually quite similar to the custom development option. You have incredible flexibility. The difference being, generally speaking, these IPaaS solutions are low code, which means I don't have to write any actual code to get something done. I'm given a user interface, right? I'm given button clicks and drop downs and options, and I drag and drop, and I can visually see what I'm doing, right? That is the power of an IPaaS. It allows a non-developer, right, so an administrative type person, to go in and make changes and keep this up to date, and they can do it faster. It's a quicker time to market, and it's less expensive than leveraging a developer. And the cons: high recurring fees, generally speaking, right? I have to pay a licensing cost to use an integration platform as a service, and it's still not a maintained solution, right? If I decide, you know what, I need this additional piece of information in order to have the dashboard or the report that I need to better run my business. Well, somebody has to go build that, right? Same problem that you run in with custom development. The difference is now you can now have an admin go in and do that quickly, instead of having to have an admin or a business analyst to figure out what has to happen and then write up a request and submit it to a developer queue and write all that kind of stuff. I have a much faster time to market with a lower cost resource that's, quite honestly, closer to the business. So all in all, this is probably the route that we suggest to most people. For most people, this makes the most sense, because the last option here is what we call a turnkey solution, right? So those are things where somebody has made a fully encapsulated, it works right out of the box solution for what you need. You install it, you're done. A great example is, Salesforce is a customer relationship management tool. And as you can imagine, it's pretty reliant on emails, right? It's keeping track of who you're sending emails to and the email addresses of the people you're talking to. I want to integrate with Gmail or Microsoft Outlook or whatever email system you're using. Well, guess what? Salesforce has that integration for you, right? You install it and it's done. You don't have to touch it again. It's going to handle all your use cases. Whenever that's an option, that is, generally speaking, the way you go, right? Because it is so fast and it's maintained. You don't have to think about it. It falls in line with that, you know, cloud-based mentality where I can pick best of breed, right? Pick the solution that's right for me, and I no longer have to worry about maintaining servers and hiring and managing developers and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, the cons. Most of the time, there is some sort of recurring fee. It tends to be the most expensive of the options. Support is no longer in your hands, so if something breaks, you're dependent on that company to address it, which, right, as great as it is most of the time, if it happens to be something that's critical to your business that breaks, you don't have the ability to address it quickly. And if the company that you're working with doesn't deem it a priority, you just kind of have to wait for them to get to it. And so, you know, that is a con. And there's no flexibility, right? So if you say, hey, you know, it'd be great if it did this, and the answer is we don't have that functionality, guess what? You don't have that functionality, right? And there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And so it's very, very common where you're not going to be able to find turnkey solutions for everything. And so most of the time, what we're seeing is a combination of two, sometimes even all three of these different options. And so we're going turnkey where we can, and then the rest need to be, right, customized. At that point, we're deciding, do we develop or do we go with an IPaaS? And most of the time, we're pushing clients towards an IPaaS because it's faster, it's lighter, it's more agile. Those changes, they are going to happen. It's not an if, it's a when, and you need to be able to adapt quickly when that happens. And for most people, a platform like that is going to be faster than working with a developer. So now we've talked about integrations, why they're important, what role they play in the digital transformation effort. And you know, we've talked a little bit about why it's so important for you, why it's important for you to at least consider integrations being a big initiative for you in the very near future. I want to take a little bit of time to go over some of the tips that we have from people that do this day in and day out on what you need to consider when you are taking on an integration. First, we are really talking about process. When you are doing an integration is a direct reflection of the systems that you've chosen to work with, the processes, the business processes that you have in play, and the quality of data that you have in your system. So if you choose a system that has no APIs and it's cloud-based and there's no way to get the data out, guess what? You're not going to be able to integrate with it. There's no way to get the data out. Now, those companies are few and far between, but it's very common that we run into companies that don't have a complete API or don't consider all of the use cases that you need to address. And so that's not an integration problem. That is a reflection of your system and a problem with the system. It's also a reflection of your business process and the quality of your data, right? So if I have a sales rep that keeps entering Cali instead of California, guess what? When I run my report to see all of my deals in California, that information is now inaccurate. And it's not because the integration's broken, it's because you have a data quality issue. So things like that, you have to understand that your integrations are a reflection of those things, and that is why integrations are so complex, right? They're dynamic and they're complex because they're a direct reflection of your processes and your systems and your data, all of which is fluid. All of it's going to change. So again, another reason why it's important to make sure whatever solution you end up going with, you have the flexibility to account for all of the change that you're going to incur. Next is documentation. Everybody thinks they know what they need with an integration, right? It's so simple in their minds. I just need my sales data to go from my CRM to my ERP, right? It's not that hard. Why do I have to go through this documentation process? Why is it so complicated? So on and so forth. Well, my guess is you don't actually know what needs to happen. And when we kick off a project, what we usually do is we get, right, if it's in this use case, right, CRM to ERP, I get the VP of sales and I get the controller or the CFO and I put them in the same room and I say, awesome, help me understand what needs to happen here. And the VP of sales will go off and what they need. And then the controller will be like, you want to do what? No way are we doing that. No, 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 no. We got to do it this way. And then the VP of sales says, you want me to do what? There's no way. That's so restrictive, right? People are not usually on the same page. You're in line at the high level. Yeah, I need information, sales orders to flow from my CRM to my ERP. That's great. We both agree on that. But the devil's in the details. Have you figured out exactly what information needs to flow over? Have you figured out when it needs to flow over? Have you figured out what format it needs to be in, right? I can all but guarantee you have not thought through those things. And the only way you're going to get yourself to think through that is by creating documentation. Going through the process of putting it down on pen with pen and paper is going to force you to think through things that you haven't thought through before. Third, identify your admin or your data stewards or however you want to to identify it. But once that solution's built, somebody's got to maintain it, right? And not only that, even during the build, if I'm taking my CRM data and putting it in my ERP, well, who is owning the CRM and what the data needs to look like there? And who is owning what the data needs to look like and where it's going to reside in the ERP? You have to have what we call a data steward, and usually that's your admin. Somebody has to own that and understand what's happening and know where things need to go and understand the ripple effect of any changes that you may make. So identifying who those resources are is very important in making sure that A, the initial implementation is successful, but B, once it's been built, you can maintain that solution. And number 4, last but not least, don't underestimate the importance of experts. As you're going through this process, there's going to be a lot of unknown, a lot of stuff that you're going to have to deal with that's going to be difficult. And if somebody has already gone through that process, they're a lot better suited to take the project on than you are. They don't have to do the whole thing, but don't underestimate how much of a benefit an expert can be in a project like this, right? Going back to that little whiteboarding session, again, technology is fantastic and it's critical to the success of your company, but in and of itself will do you almost no good. If you can have a good, solid strategy and direction, then you can use technology to implement that said strategy or direction and be significantly more efficient. And so, if don't underestimate the value of pulling somebody in to help you out, particularly with the strategy and the architecture. So with that being said, we are on to our third polling question.
Okay, polling question number 3 is a true or false. In regards to documentation, you may think you have an understanding of what you want to accomplish, but until you are forced to put in all of the writing, you are likely not to understand what needs to happen at a level necessary for integration. All right, 94% true and 6% false.
Awesome. So the answer is true. You guys were right. Until you are forced to put it down with pen and paper and think through it, chances are you don't quite understand all of the details of what needs to happen for your integration to go smoothly. So all of this being said, I do have some sources listed here. I'm assuming that we'll kind of distribute this at the end. Is that true?
I included it in their handout that was sent to them.
Perfect. So you already have a copy of it. So you have some resources here that address some of the quotes and some of the statistics that I pulled, as well as some just resources to help you dive into integrations a little bit more if you're interested. And I guess at this point, I'll open it up to questions.
Awesome. So if you guys do have any questions at all, please use the Q&A box or the chat feature. All right, I don't see any questions coming through. So if you guys do think of anything, feel free to contact us. Nick's contact information is on the screen. And Nick, did you have anything else?
No, appreciate your time, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you all for attending, and everyone have a great day. Thank